Hello everybody, welcome to the channel. Today we are looking at a very special Avengers issue, something that is unique not only to this brand new series that we've just kicked off here, but also to the channel in general. So I'm very excited to go over this this issue with you. Of course, I always want to take a minute and thank everybody who has been supporting and subscribing to the channel. As of the recording of this video, we're a little over 400 subscribers, and that means we're making great strides towards our goal of 1,000 subscribers. Now, if you're not a subscriber and you just found this, let me tell you why you might want to subscribe, and that has to do with art, specifically free art. That's right, free art. So, in celebration of all of the review channels or review series that I have here on the channel, I have created a original one-of-a-kind piece of artwork that I will be giving to random subscribers when we hit the 1,000 subscriber mark. So we'll be picking subscribers at random, and I will be sending them art for free. There's no purchase necessary, absolutely no money out of your pocket. All you have to do is click that subscribe button. So let me show you what we're going to be looking at here in terms of what art you could win. So we start off with the Incredible Hulk. We have that series here, looking at the Hulk solo series. So we're going to be giving away a piece of Hulk art. We have Amazing Spider-Man, which is the original review series from the channel, so that celebrates that. We have the X-Men in their original school uniforms. This is the original lineup, and we are, as of, again, the recording of this video, I think only 8 issues into this series, so great place to start out. And if you like the X-Men, here's some original X-Men art. We have, of course, the Avengers, which is what we're here for today. And this story does feature this original team lineup. So very excited to go over that with you. And then there are still 2 more series on the way. So one of them is going to be Captain America. So when Captain America makes his debut in the Avengers, I'm going to go ahead and start that solo series. So you could win this piece of Captain America artwork. And then last but not least is the Fantastic Four, the book that started it all, the original team of Marvel heroes. They will be another series. So if you want a chance to win some of that free artwork, all you have to do, as I mentioned, is be a subscriber when we hit 1,000 subscribers. So click that button and you're instantly enrolled in the drawing to win that artwork. That said, this is, like I said, a special issue and a special episode. So without further ado, let's jump to the comic and let's start checking it out. Okay, so this is the Avengers 1.5. So obviously, what makes this different is the fact that this issue did not exist in the original run of the Avengers. This is something that was done much later. So this issue comes from December of 1999. So it was the idea, there was I think many of the, if not all of the Marvel series that were being printed at that time were doing this, a 1/2. So that would take place in between issues 1 and 2, a very famous series, and kind of fill in a gap with a brand new story, but it fit in the style. And what's important here, which I think is really cool as well, yes, this is done in 1999. They found an artist that has a bit of a retro style. We'll talk about the artist in just a moment, but they also did a lot of little things that really make it feel like it would fit in that era. So of course, obviously the designs of the characters are on model with Avengers #1. We have the box art. We have, noticed, instead of $2.50, it's 250 cents, which I think is hilarious. We still even have the comic book code authority stamp up here, which by 1999 had was long gone. But they continued to make it feel very retro. So that's awesome. So the cover. Let's talk about the cover real quick, and then we'll get into everything else. The cover, very classic idea for a composition. You have your heroes charging at a villain who is in the extreme foreground, and we are looking past them at the heroes coming at us. X-Men #1, obviously Avengers #1 with Loki, etc. It has been used a ton. Now, I'm going to talk as well very quickly before we get into who the artist is. Let's just talk about this style. It is a very simple line work, but then the contour line, which is the outline of each figure, becomes even more important. And this is done really, really nicely. There are some, what I refer to throughout my notes here as Kirby-isms. So, of course, if you saw our first episode, you know Jack Kirby was the penciler for the first issue of the Avengers. And while this is not Jack Kirby, it has some of the hallmarks of his style, whether that's the rendering techniques, the anatomy a little bit, the squared off fingers, the squared off knees. This is something that we definitely attribute to Jack Kirby, what he brought to comic book storytelling. And then we do also have, which we'll see more, a lot of what I call, again, Kirby-isms with things like technology in the background, how he used crazy geometric shapes put together at weird angles and stuff like that, made it extremely unique. And we see that in here too. The other thing I want to point out, which we don't do a ton of, but this is in because all my series so far that were, again, as of the recording here, Spider-Man being the first one, is still in the 1960s. So with all the other comics that we've talked about that are all still being printed on newsprint with old school printing technique, 4-color printing where you're mixing your 4 red, it's not RGB, it's CMYK. So cyan, magenta, yellow, black, are being mixed in various ratios to create different tones of color. Here, this is done with a computer. By 1999, obviously, we were doing full Photoshop computer coloring. And we see just a touch of it, but for the most part, the colors are done fairly flat, or at least with minimal gradient so that it could feel like it's something that could have been produced in the 1960s with the old technique. And I really appreciate that. So I think that's really great. If they had gone with a very contemporary coloring technique, not the color choices, but technique, I think it really would have missed the mark. So great cover, the Avengers, and then we have Doctor Doom. So that's kind of cool. So let's open it up and check it out. So what I love about this, again, by the late 90s, we weren't seeing things like we were back in the day as far as some of the ads. You would get what are called house ads, which is you're reading your comic and you're going to see ads for other Marvel products or things of that nature. However, what they've done here is they've recreated some of the style of the old ads, but all are absolute jokes. So this one over here is an absolute sarcastic take on the Charles Atlas ads that we used to see back in the day. So again, I don't have a paper copy of this comic myself. This is still our scanned PDF copies that we're looking at of these series. So I don't know off the top of my head if this was printed on traditional newsprint or if it was printed on the more modern paper. My guess is it's modern paper, but what they've done is they've used Photoshop to create noise. So essentially almost like a small dot pattern within the coloring to recreate that feel of ink on newsprint. But I doubt it was actually printed on newsprint as of 1999. Nice recap here telling us who the Avengers are. They've just formed together and made their official public release, telling the world that they're here to protect everybody. So let's talk about the art team. And I do like this as well. They kind of talk about who the originals were and who's standing in for them. So this issue is written by Roger Stern, filling in for Stan Lee. The art is by Bruce Timm, If you're an animation fan, that certainly should sound familiar, filling in for Jack Kirby. Lettered by Comicraft, so again, digital lettering tells us kind of where we're at in the time frame. Filling in for Sam Rosen, that would have been the original letterer, and then edited by Tom Brevoort. And of course, this is the inside Marvel joke of Irving Forbush. Irving Forbush is not a real person. It's a joke name that they use for all kinds of stuff. So there we go. And again, very nice. You have a great characterizations here in these drawings of the Avengers. Iron Man, his helmet almost looks like it's smiling with the hand raised and the gold. And again, you have these very Kirby-esque rendering techniques. It's not shaded like real metal would be shaded. It is a stylized approach to it. You have a Hulk in his little green shorts, which is what he was wearing in Avengers #1. Hair, he's got a hairy chest, hairy arms, flat top, very monstrous looking Hulk. Thor with the hammer and his big helmet, big wings, big smile. Great. I mean, the whole thing really fits in with the style of the times. And as I said, continuing that Kirbyism with sort of angular line work, and we'll get into that more as we go. So like I said, this is from December 1999. Pretty fun bit here. So again, a little bit of a recap. We got some really great Kirby tech here with the Fantastic Four as they're reacting to this notification about the Avengers being a new super team. Of course, the Fantastic Four were first. So when I say Kirbyisms, this right here is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. And that is, you have a pedestal or platform, you have some dials, levers, whatever. You have this thin little band coming up into a connection box with a weird pipe that's bent at strange 45-ish angle, and then a circle within a circle. We have no idea what this does. It doesn't relate to anything in real life, but that is just great take on Kirby tech designs, as well as obviously that plays into what the thing is holding up, this machinery as well. And then I do very much like this face. The thing's face is perfectly in line, again, with the characterization that Jack Kirby would have been using as of that time. So you get the real hard shadows, the sort of, I don't know, not blobby, but the weird sort of big oversized mouth with very large, rock-like lips around, the big blue eyes. I mean, it is straight out of the early 60s. This is a great depiction of the thing. So let me just real quick side note, and I'm going to come back because this is just me. If you're not, I'm sorry. I'll come right back. I didn't mention who Bruce Timm is for anybody who doesn't know the artist. We'll come back to that. And Roger Stern. What I want to talk about is simple line art. If you're not used to simplifying shapes, so this is a note. I had somebody reach out to me one time many years ago and asked me to do a custom piece of artwork based on Charles Schultz comic strip, The Peanuts, right? Charlie Brown, Snoopy, that kind of stuff. So I wanted to recreate that look as much as possible. So I studied those lines. And if you think about Charlie Brown, Snoopy, etc., it's very simplistic. Everything all the line work that would make up those characters, their faces, their shapes, has been boiled down and condensed to one simple thing. And yes, on paper you go, well, it's one, Charlie Brown's head is one big circle. But you have to have the right shape to that circle. You can't just draw any old circle. It has to be right. And the eyes have to be in just the right spot. So the more simplified you bring your art style down, the less leeway you have for mistakes or variations. It has to be tight. It has to be very consistent. It's actually much harder than you might think, because With fewer lines, every line is extremely important. So that's just what I wanted to talk about when we go through this. It may appear on the surface like this is very simple artwork. It is very complex because, again, you're dialing everything into just the lines that you need. So, as I mentioned, let's talk about Roger Stern and Bruce Timm. So, Roger Stern, the writer, Roger Stern broke into comics in the mid 70s at Marvel, sort of what they refer to as the third generation. He wrote Guardians of the Galaxy, Captain America, the Hulk, Spider-Man, the Avengers, plus a whole lot more. So, he was a very prolific writer for Marvel in the 80s. Late 70s to 80s. And then he did end up leaving for a while and going over to DC Comics, which very common thing. Wrote Superman, Starman, and a bunch of other characters and books for DC Comics. And obviously by the 90s, he's back doing certainly freelance work for Marvel, which is what we see here. Now, Bruce Timm, like I said, if you're a fan of animation, that name should be familiar. Bruce Timm is one of the primary creators of the DC Universe animated style. He was one of the architects. He came up with most of the designs for Batman the Animated Series in the 90s, which was then so successful that it was followed up by Superman the Animated Series, Batman Beyond, Justice League Unlimited, etc., etc. And again, animation, because you're having to draw at a minimum 12 frames of art for 1 second of animation, it's a lot easier to keep your designs simplified. That way, they can be replicated quickly and consistently if you have multiple teams working on it, or again, just speed-wise. So this animated style that Bruce Timm sort of developed is a little bit of what we're seeing. What we're really seeing on this page is a combination of Bruce Timm doing his best Jack Kirby impression. That's my personal opinion. So, and again, Bruce Timm, but even before Batman the Animated Series, he was working on pretty much all of the major 1980s animated series that we watched on TV as kids. So things like, one of the things that was mentioned was Masters of the Universe, for example, He-Man and Masters of the Universe. So Bruce Timm, a highly respected and accredited artist in his own right. So interesting to see his take coming from an animation style back into comics and see how that works. So, back here, we're doing pretty good. Things look really nice. I do want to point this out. I have mentioned this on many of my series. This is a comic book sort of rule of thumb. And that is, we have these borders around every panel. That's what, limits the space and gives us a frame within, so to view the image within. One of the rules of thumbs are you never want your figures standing on or leaning against or pressing on a border of your panel. The panel can overlap, so it could be, I'm trying to do it this way, so that this is the figure, this is the edge of the border. It could overlap. You see that here on the Dr. Doom hand. That's perfectly fine. Over here, Reed Richards' legs. He's going off the panel. That's fine. The Thing, that's great. Spider-Man's foot lines up with the panel over here. We also have Jarvis, the Avengers butler. He is also standing on the panel there. Dr. Doom is extremely close to the bottom of the panel. It's a shadow, but it's very close. This happens a lot through the borders, through a lot of the issue, and that's probably just somebody, again, whose education in art is not comics. What does it do if you have your figure on the border? Well, you're probably going, what's the big deal? The big deal is this is a window into a scene, and we want to create the illusion that the scene goes beyond the borders. when you put your character on the border, it's a visual trick, and our brains recognize that as a hard object. Like it's the border is part of the image, not a frame around it. And it helps to not ruin, but weaken your attempt at creating 3D space in a two-dimensional plane of paper. So, something to look out for. It happens here. It's not a big deal. I point it out because that's my job here on this channel, and what we're doing with these reviews is I'm being a bit nitpicky about stuff. But that said, it certainly doesn't ruin the reading of the story. It's just something to recognize. Let's see here. One of the things I don't like, we'll see this more, and I point this out, is how Doctor Doom's mouth is drawn throughout here. So what I mean is Doctor Doom has a mask, just like Iron Man. He is in a suit of armor. His has more humanistic features. It has a nose, and the area around his mouth is shaped like a mouth. But it's not metal that can move. It is a solid mask. You can see there's sort of this mechanical shape inside the mouth. That is, I always took that to be, that's like a speaker. His voice should be very electronic coming through this mask. But for the sake of emotion, showing emotion, instead of drawing the character's face flat, Bruce Timm has drawn a moving animated mouth, which with Doctor Doom's mask, which I don't like. I'm just, again, being nitpicky, but that's just me. So what we've got here story-wise, don't want to skip over that. The Avengers have just shown up on the scene. They've announced they're here to protect the world. Doctor Doom is mad because, now he has another set of heroes that he has to deal with. So he's dealt with the Fantastic Four. He's dealt with Ant-Man on his own, Spider-Man. Now he's got another group. So he is going to make plans to try to destroy this group before they can thwart his future plans. So a little preemptive strike from Doctor Doom's perspective. This guy, Major Bowman from the military, shows up at the Avengers mansion to talk to the Avengers. And boom, here we go. We've got a great half of a splash page showing off the Avengers. And again, here's one of the things I'm talking about. We don't need Wasp standing on the border. We don't need Iron Man standing on the border. When you get down to this part of the page and you're looking through, again, it sort of flattens out and we don't feel like they're set back into the page. Very simple fix. You just bring them up 1/4 of an inch off the page, draw them a little bit higher. Yes, it may overlap some of the wall and stuff, but that's not a big deal. Other than that, the figures are really, really good. Again, very stylized. The rendering on Iron Man, very stylized, this sort of swooshy shininess. That's a Jack Kirby thing. The big square jaws, trying to think of what else. The way I do like, so normally, especially more modern comics, our superhero costumes tend to be skin tight. We've got wrinkles in Ant-Man's costume. We've got wrinkles in some Thor and stuff like that. So nice little touches, elements there. It's all very good. It took me a minute to notice this. There is a coloring error here on the Hulk's thumb. So the Hulk's thumb has been colored purple like his like his shorts. Unfortunately, that should be green. Let me point out, this is also, again, sort of a Jack Kirbyism. And what I mean is these squared off fingers. That is something that he really developed as just a simplified way to draw hands. Hands are not easy. It's just easier if you just flatten them out like that. And that's exactly what Jack did. And that's what Bruce Timm is doing here as well. I will point this out. It does kind of look like the Hulk only has 4 toes. I know if you go back to our Hulk series, we've seen stuff like that before. Where you're like, sometimes the Hulk has 5 toes. Sometimes he has 4 toes. let's pretend there's a little toe over there in the corner that isn't being seen, but he should have 5 toes. But again, this angular shading, again, very reminiscent of the style of the times. So it's a nice group shot there. This Hulk and Thor not quite getting along, makes sense. And here's a problem that I have here with this fist. And this is something I see people do fairly regularly, which is the thumb goes too far across. So when you're making a fist, your thumb, as you can see, is going to cover that index finger and maybe some of, into the, towards the middle finger, press against the middle finger. Shouldn't be, you definitely don't want to do this. You don't, can't really do this. So fist, here's your fist. When the thumb comes too far over like this, now it's weird. And that's what's happening. The Hulk's thumb is really far over. It's almost the way a child makes a fist, right? Like a little kid. So just a heads up, when you're doing your characters and you're drawing them and they're angry and they're making that fist, make sure your thumbs are in the right position. Use your own hands as reference. They're easy and right there. The military contact here is telling them about Doctor Doom and how back in the day, the Fantastic Four fought Doctor Doom. He has a big flying fortress, like a giant dirigible technology fortress. They fought. Doctor Doom escaped and left it empty, and it was seized by the government, so it's in holding. So that's what's happening. This guy is talking to them about Doctor Doom and how he's really serious, and everybody's kind of chipping in and their 2 thoughts. This is really cute. One of the things I like about this is Bruce Timm does understand very, very well, again, probably that animation background, is camera angles. So when I always refer to camera angles, what I mean is our view of each panel reflects as if it was a camera taking a photo or shooting a video from that angle. So again, the camera here is slightly up as we look down at everybody. Here, the camera is very close to the Hulk and Thor. So each panel, the camera is moved, and that is something you would do through whether that's filmmaking, television, or animation to keep the energy moving and to keep the interest. And he's doing a really good job here in doing the same thing panel to panel, and that's what we've got. And I like this little interaction here. The Wasp is very flirty, and her face really reflects it, but it's done very well. Now, again, story-wise, they're explaining Doctor Doom. Why does he wear this armor? Why does he wear this mask? They believe he has been disfigured, which is the case. And so you could have shown the major, the military contact. He could have just been holding the picture and telling them, but the fact that Thor is holding it, but then Wasp is making a funny comment, and the way he's looking at her with one eyebrow raised and stuff, that's what I call business. So what I mean by that is if you have a character and the script in your comic says the character holds up a piece of paper, you can draw them holding up a piece of paper. You can draw them scratching their head looking at the paper. You can draw them pulling their chin. You can have them putting on some glasses. Going from just holding the paper to all those other things, that's business. And the more you do, the more it fleshes out your characters. We have some very cool retro ads. So these are retro ads talking about what comics would have been on sale at the same time, except it says this is not on sale because you can't get this comic. So this is 112 and a half, which I think is hilarious. Watch for the greatest symbols. And then you have these guys in these recreations of this old artwork, 12 cents a comic, the old corner box. This is really cool. So just as the this gentleman is telling the Avengers about Doctor Doom's captured ship, it takes off and nothing they can do to stop it. So they call this guy who's, takes his call at the Avengers mansion and explains what's going on. Doom has retaken this fortress. It's full of technology. We have to stop him. And they go, great, let's do it. So as they take off, this is nice. This is a good team shot. The only problem I have is this moment of the team running off into action needs a bigger panel. It's very squished in, so all your details are extremely small. There's no room for background. I would have loved to have seen that, not quite as big as this panel here, but certainly much larger. So how do you do that? Sometimes there's things where you can, merge panels. Maybe panel 3 and 4 could be merged into one panel. It would have been a lot of dialogue to do it, but it would have given us a lot more room for the team, that extra cool shot of the team running into action. So they've got a new helicopter, is going to give everybody a ride except for Thor. He's like, I got this. And they take off. So what they're using here in the next several panels are Dutch angles. Dutch angle is when you take your camera and you, let's see if I can pull this off. You take your camera and you go whoop, like that. That's a Dutch angle. That's what we see here with Thor, with the inside of the helicopter. It just adds a little bit of motion, energy, etc. to the scene. And so Bruce does a great job of using that here. And again, flipping the camera back and forth between looking almost from the outside through the windshield and now from the back forward. I think that's great. One thing to be very careful of, where he kind of missed it here. I'm going to zoom in one more time so I can get it over here. The Wasp's eyes. They are not lined up at all. Well, now I'm zooming in and it doesn't seem as bad. When I had it zoomed out, I felt like this eye over here was way higher. Now, not the outside, but that iris and pupil felt higher. It felt like her eyes were like this, like one was way higher than the other, and that they were looking in almost two different directions. Maybe it's not as bad as I thought it was, but that's something to be really careful of, especially when you have a character like that. Her eyes are really big. The eyes are a really important part of any figure that you're drawing. In fact, it's one of the places almost every artist, we almost all start with the eyes, because if you mess up the eyes, it's not worth continuing the rest. You might want to just start over. So it felt like again, please drop me a note in the comments if you look at this, if you feel like the Wasp's eyes are perfectly in line, or if you feel like they're a little googly-eyed. I'm curious if it's just me or if anybody else got that sense. We've got that splash of the giant fortress just to give us some scale of what this is. So that's kind of cool. It's like a very reminiscent of the first time we saw the helicarrier. So if you're a Marvel fan, Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. have these giant floating aircraft carriers called the helicarriers. That's what this shot reminds me of. I'm sure it is an homage to that. And then they're attacked by a magnetic beam of some kind that's pulling them into the ship. So cool stuff. The Hulk is great in this sequence. The artwork is phenomenal. It looks really, really good. Here's something that could have been a little better, because it took me a while to figure out what was happening. Where is Thor's hammer? And that is because, one, some of it is the color. This gray doesn't pop enough from the helicopter. It's kind of blends in. But it also has sort of a tangent. So tangent, if you're not familiar, we've talked about these in other videos. Tangent is when the contour line of two objects lines up almost perfectly or perfectly, so you can't tell what's supposed to be in front of the other. And this is one of those things where your brain is filling in pieces that aren't necessarily there. But what you've got is the top of the windshield of the helicopter fits in line with this line of Mjolnir right there. And then again, this side down on this side really kind of lines up with that end that kind of, I don't know, doesn't angles down at the end of the hammer. And so the whole thing sort of blends in. It took me a few views to be like, wait a minute, where's Thor's hammer? And he's flying, twirling the hammer and stuff. And I thought maybe that at first glance at normal size, I was like, oh, that's what this is. And then I realized, no, that's the blades of the helicopter. So where's Mjolnir? And I had to kind of look to find it. Hulk is awesome. This is great. Really fun stuff. Again, really committed to the 4 toes. Interesting. Not a mistake earlier. He is committing 100% to saying the Hulk only has 4 toes. But again, you see those blunted off fingers, blunted off toes, this square kneecap with the rendering underneath it, all hallmarks of the Jack Kirby style. And definitely a much later style than we would have seen in the 1960s, or I guess the early 60s when Avengers 1 came out. But great energy. The leg going back is terrific. The hands coming out. This twist of the punch, so one hand is way back, even breaking the panel border a little bit, which is nice. We haven't seen that too much before in any of the series we've done. We've got the lettering breaking the panel and his knuckle breaking the panel just a little bit. I think that's terrific. Thor's reaction is good, and now they're inside and running. But again, the Hulk is running on the border, which I don't like. But other than that, very good. Again, very angular. All of your shading is sort of not 100% squared off. There's some rounded edges, but it's definitely angular. I think that's the best way to describe it. The Avengers take off, and the Wasp is blindsided by the pilot and the Major. And they gas her, and you find out they are somehow working for Doctor Doom. And again, I get it. It's all part of the style of, you just talked about it, this taking Jack Kirby to the extreme of the blunted hands, blunted fingers, square kneecaps, angular shading, everything there. Where it starts to fall apart a little bit sometimes is like this, when you have multiple angles. So obviously, even everybody's finger is slightly rounded. Even if it was square and it's coming right at you, which some of these fingers kind of are, there's a thickness to them. But these are drawn without any thickness underneath. And so they end up looking like they just come to a point like a chisel tip, which doesn't really work. So I didn't like the fingers here. Whereas, again, in a long shot like the Hulk going, like that, and you want to just square those off, that works fine. Let's see. The Hulk, so there's going to be individual traps for each Avenger. So Wasp is gassed. The Hulk is tricked into going into a room that is so slippery, seamless and slippery, that he can't stand up. And then Dr. Doom uses compressed air to keep him sort of aloft in the air, bouncing around where he can't plant his feet and use his obviously amazing strength. So the panel at the top is good. It's a good reaction of the Hulk slipping and falling. For me personally, I would have liked to have seen him in the air. And this is, again, where this bottom panel, there's no background. The bottom panel, his hand is touching it. The foot is down here. It feels like that's the ground. And so the next thing to see is him up in the air being blown around by pressure jets. Doesn't work for me as well. I would have liked to have seen him slip and be, whoop, up in the air totally, and then getting bounced around. One more thing. Again, the shading and stuff is fine. It is exactly what we want. It is this stylized. So this, again, like I said, this is Jack Kirby style meeting Bruce Timm's animation style. And there are elements here that you can see from people like Mike Mignola. There's a little bit of that in here that I see now and then as well as some other artists. But no, this the hatching here lining up again. It's not a tangent per se, but you want to be careful. Yes, so he's got he's got a bump at the ball of the foot, and it curves under, and so there's a little shadow here, which is great. So you're just shading to help create that illusion of shape, of three-dimensionality. Perfect. But it lines up with these lines here on the calf, and it kind of just blends that together a little bit. So again, just something to be careful of. It's not really a problem. Again, didn't take me out of the story as I was reading it the first time, but we're here to critique, and that's what we're doing. Thor walks into his own trap. He's surrounded by some sort of spheres. And then we see Doctor Doom explains these spheres will destroy the entire Fantastic Four. He doesn't explain how, but that they will. So we know that it's pretty powerful. Again, this right here works as a tangent with the hand of Doctor Doom. His arm is thicker. This hand is overlapping this arm. But because you have a line, our brain fills in that this is the size of his forearm, and the line of the top of the fingers of the left hand kind of match up, as well as it's at the right there at that angle of the elbow. Very simple. You just move that hand up a little bit or move the hand farther down and draw the whole arm, and you either really overlap it or don't overlap it at all. But overlapping a little is where you're going to run into your tangents. So something to be careful of. It also doesn't help with the flat coloring because everything is the exact same tone of gray, so it will blend together. So you got to be careful about that. Iron Man has found Doom. Now, this took me a minute, even though I'm reading it and I get it. We see Doctor Doom here. He's looking at screens. He's in a chair. The next Doom we see, there's screens, but he's no longer in a chair. So when Iron Man goes to grab him, this is a great Iron Man, by the way. Great hand, really nice perspective of the hand coming at you. Seeing the eyes and part of his face through the holes of the armor is pretty cool. I think it's done really well. And then there's this big explosion, great lighting effect. That works really well. And then this wasn't Doctor Doom. It was a robot that is siphoning electricity from Iron Man's suit. But really, really cool little sequence there. Great lighting, great effects. It just took me a minute to realize, oh, yeah, okay, this is happening somewhere other than here. This is not a robot that Iron Man found, and this was always set up separately. So this Doom is somewhere else. Ant-Man running around, and he finds Major Bowman. But Major Bowman, we thought, was potentially working for Doctor Doom. And what we find out was this guy here has never met the Avengers. He never went to Avengers Mansion. This guy has been tied up here the whole time. The Major Bowman that we saw at the beginning at the Avengers Mansion is someone else. But this is some really great stuff. Again, business. What is your character doing? So Ant-Man finds Bowman and looks through the door. We don't have to have Ant-Man in the foreground. You could just show the door and Major Bowman and then Ant-Man's dialogue coming from off screen. But doing it this way is great. Holding onto that wall, the grasp of the hands, it all gives kind of leaning forward like that. Like what? That all gives personality and character to your figures. And that's really, really nice. So what we find out, is the Major Bowman that the Avengers were talking to is Doctor Doom. So obviously comics are comics, and we're going to talk about the suspension of disbelief, which we do with things like this. There's no way this mask underneath a human face, again, a mask that is metal and shouldn't have a jaw that's moving. How would that work? It wouldn't work. But we're going to go, okay, I guess nobody could have recognized that there's lumps and things that are rivets underneath this guy's skin somehow, or that his voice is coming out of a mechanical device. That's fine. So we see what's happened, and I get the impression, I don't think they ever, oh no, they do tell us later, we'll see, but I believe this guy's a robot. The guy that was the pilot who gassed the Wasp and caught her, I believe I believe he's a robot. Again, this is another thing I don't like I said, of the mouth moving. So you can see the difference. Here, it's very big, like he's laughing at Ant-Man, and then you see what the mask should look like, which is just that sort of slit with the mechanism in it. This advertisement, this is a house ad for Marvel. They did this thing. It was a, drug awareness marketing, or not marketing, but public service announcement stuff that ran through all the comics of the time. We're just going to skip through that. Fun. I like these shirts based on the 60s art. That is really cool. I think those are really, really neat. And then you've got here X-Men on sale. Very neat as well. Again, just sort of very retro with the ads. We come back to Iron Man, Thor, everybody's in danger. Now Ant-Man, there's gas. And then again, you see, now this is great if it's the Green Goblin, or it's the Kingpin, or it's Loki. But for Doctor Doom, he shouldn't have an expressive face because it's a mask. Wasp has an idea, which this will come back around. And to me, I felt like this wasn't fair because there's no way for us to understand what she's looking at. So real quick, just to go back here, when we see her, so you see her in this bubble, there's screens all around. So this is Doctor Doom's gas control area. And then we see this purple screen behind her with lines and little circles on it. That's what we have here as well. She's seeing it and she has an idea, but it doesn't really sell it, in my opinion. Now Ant-Man's like, hey, I got an idea. Don't worry about it. Check this out. And you can see he's putting something in his mouth, which is his growth formula. So instead of shrinking and then using a growth formula to get to normal size, we now get to see Giant Man. And Giant Man is taking the growth the growth formula at normal size so that he could get bigger. So obviously, what happened, just from a lore standpoint, Ant-Man, there's only so many things you need somebody really itty-bitty for. And the Wasp can already get itty-bitty. So what do we need Ant-Man for? So the idea was, hey, what if we changed him? We'll change him into Giant Man. It's more action-oriented. You could do more with a giant, super strong guy than you can, I think, with a tiny. But then you also look at characters like the Atom from DC. There have been multiple versions of Ant-Man that have been extremely successful. So could have done it. But anyway, Ant-Man went from being Ant-Man to Giant Man very quickly in the Avengers. And that's what we're seeing here. But I love the panels. I like the awesome stuff. These are really cool in panel 2 and 3 here, where you feel the pressure, right? He's grown so big that he's squished and he's trying to put his back through the ceiling above. I think that's awesome. And then him doing it with the explosion lines coming out, the energy lines coming out high, and then the way that he's ripped through, I think is just great. Great expression, great power to the figures, really, really nice stuff. So he saves the Hulk from getting spun around all over, and we've got a nice little funny moment of the Hulk being sick, like he just got off a roller coaster, which I think is very funny. And then we get to Thor, and these globes or whatever, he's disappearing. So essentially, I forget where it is. Somewhere in here, it explains to us what these globes do. They were going to transport him to like another dimension. And so I like the technique here of the fading out. So he's still colored with the same colors, maybe a little bit lighter like on the blue, but just to have sort of this dash. So I don't know whether it was inked and then white over the top to make the white lines, or it was just inked in this directional way, but I think it's really cool and works terrific. And then you have Thor spins around because he's using his hammer and the power of his hammer to open vortexes and portals within space and time. So if the bubbles are trying to transport him, he's going to counteract it with his own, and we'll see here in a second, he wins. Great lighting on the Zoth explosion. So you've got these figures here. They look really great. Nice stark shadows, so that the light area really reflects. I think that's really, really good. Very nice stuff there. Let's see. Sorry, checking my notes, make sure I don't miss anything. Cool. Nice stuff. So, where was it that it said what was going to happen to Thor? Oh, here we go. Yeah. Those power spheres shall overwhelm you, transporting you to another dimension, where there is no escape. So that's how Thor does it. So very cool. Hulk saves Iron Man from the power dampening robot. Thor gives him a lightning recharge. Again, very nice lighting on Thor. Great to note if you have someone that's expressing a lot of power, energy, electricity, having them be their core be super shaded is a great way to do that. So you go real dark in that center of the being, and then the rest of them is all lit up by the energy. So that's a great technique there. And now we have Dr. Doom, and he believes he's won, so he's going to tell the world that he's defeated the Avengers. And he mentions, yes, that this guy who was the pilot, he's an automaton. So there we go. Yeah, it was a robot. And then boom, here comes Thor. Great, great action, great perspective on the hammer. And I really like the fact that as it smashes the dome that the Wasp is in, all of the glass shards overlap stuff. So when it breaks, it explodes in all directions, which means some of that glass is coming towards us, the reader. And then that's important to note. And so it should be in front of all of the stuff we're seeing, which is the hand, the Wasp, the hammer. Terrific. Very nice attention to detail there. Doom has his own force fields to protect him that even Mjolnir can't immediately break. But again, great lighting here. Iron Man is going to use his repulsor rays to knock down that force field, but it's not in time to stop Doom going through an escape hatch. But great lighting there. And again, none of it is meant to be realistic. This is not anything that real metal would look like if light is coming or energy is coming out of its, from the metal, but it's very stylized and it works as dramatic lighting. So we're good. Great. Nice here. We got Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos, 3.5. Very cool. Not on sale. That's really neat. And then a great pinup. This is super cool. Again, just the simple lines, breaking those figures into simple shapes, bringing in that Kirbyism of the shadows. You can see it like these sort of lines where it sort of slightly curves one way, and then it's almost like an S shape or a Z shape. We see it a ton all over. You can see it on the Hulk's leg there, his abdomen, his arm. That's just, again, Kirby shorthand for shadows. And we see it on Iron Man's arm. I just like the fact that, like, Iron Man, let's just talk about Iron Man for half a second. It's not drawn realistic, but it's drawn accurately. So what I mean is the proportions of the body are good. The hand, the position where the arm would be, behind. The fact that this hand is larger coming forward is all great, but obviously his leg doesn't bulge out on the side like that. That's done for dramatic effect. The armor doesn't work. In fact, he has no ankles. So he would be walking like Frankenstein because he can't bend his foot. So that doesn't work. But the fact that this metal can bend and twist like it's soft flesh is, again, just stylized stuff, which is fun. It brings energy. We're not looking for photorealistic stuff. That's other artists. Here, we're looking for the distilled. I think that's a word I've been searching for this whole video. Is this style is distilled down to just the key elements. So it's very cool. Great Hulk here. I love it. He's jumping down after Doom, going through the escape hatch. That is so cool. Great, nice, big, thick contour to separate him from the background. I really like that. Expression on the face is terrific. Awesome pose. Really, really great stuff. Same here. This one, not as good. He looks like a big, I don't know, big troll coming through, but it's kind of funny. It works. But I like him getting shot by Doom with the blast from his armor, from his gauntlet. Again, really nice. You feel the pain. You've got the tensing of the hands. We don't need to draw every element. He's getting blasted kind of mid-chest, so you can fade out that leg. The only thing here, and this is a coloring issue, you should have the purple trunks. So we missed the purple, but hey, it took me two or three readings to notice that. So I'm sure nobody else did. And then a great face. Again, real dramatic lighting. Its light is coming from different sources all over the place, but it just emphasizes how angry the Hulk is. And I do like him smoking, the smoke coming off his body. I think that's fun. And then boom, he rips off Doom's head and finds it's a robot. Love this panel of him ripping the head off. So good. You feel the energy. There's just something about the angle of those arms that works perfectly. And then to have the sound effect follow that curve of what the motion would be from popping off like that, I think that's phenomenal. Everything here is really, really good. There's obviously a self-destruct that's going to go off on this ship. They've got to get out of here, and there's only one escape panel, and everybody's arguing over it. I won't take it. No, I won't take it. Everybody wants to be the hero, and the Hulk says, enough is enough. Throws the Major Bowman in because he's the only human without any powers or abilities, hits the eject button, out he goes, and now the Avengers just rip a hole in the side and jump out under their own power. Ant-Man and Wasp are getting a lift from Thor. Of course, Iron Man can fly, and the Hulk, what's a fall from the sky for the Hulk, right? He can withstand anything. So great stuff. Great splash page to kind of wrap things up. The figures are excellent. The foreshortening of the hands coming forward, the body's going back. I love the fact that you really can't see any of Thor's body because he's twisted up. So based on where the camera angle is, we can see his face, we can see his chest. The rest of his body would be sort of trailing behind him, but a cape covers it. So other than maybe just a foot in the back, that's a great pose because it makes sense. And I think that really, really works. Yeah, absolutely love it. Dr. Doom's ship crashes. Great smoke fire effect here. Just those black dots with the orangey smoke. If you ever see shots of like special effects explosions, that's a key element, is you have that real bright light sort of to the middle, and as it goes, the edges get real dark real fast. It's the carbon of the fuel burning, and you get those black edges. And so we all react to that because we see it all the time. It's great. And then the little debris falling as well. Perfect touch. And then there we go. So now they explain what happened and how things went. And here's where Wasp is like, oh yeah, remember that purple screen with lines and circles? She realized it was schematics of the ship, and the circles were pointing out where everybody was. So her and Ant-Man, of course, have radio connections. That's what the antenna are for. Yes, they use them with ants, but they also use them with each other. So she radio signals, hey, here's where everybody else is. And then ant/giant man goes and saves them. So great stuff there. Everybody gets out. They've stopped Doom. Pretty cool stuff. And then we find here's Dr. Doom in his lair with a single spotlight brooding. Very classic, very iconic Marvel trope of the time. We've seen it a bunch. If you go back to the early Spider-Man issues, Hulk issues, stuff like that, that's a nice way that they use to kind of wrap things up, is they'll take either the hero who's like, well, things didn't work out great for me, but I'm still going to be a hero. Or in this case, the villain who was defeated, who's like, I'm not done yet. So very cool stuff there. And then we've got these sort of fake letters from the letters page, which is awesome. I think that's hilarious. You've got the old ads, and then on the back, you've got this fake ads for what used to be called sea monkeys. They're now called sea baboons, and it's just a joke, and it's terrific. So again, love the retro style, and this has been phenomenal. So there we go. There's our story. Let's kick it back over to the desk. Let's wrap this one up. Fun. I mean, I really enjoyed it. It was very, very different than what we've seen so far. Obviously, it's interesting to see a modern take on a retro style that is similar to what we've been viewing on all of our review channels or review series here so far. So it's nice to see how it compares. And again, I think the concept of you're taking a style and you are rendering it down to its basic, simplest elements is a real skill and is much more difficult than anybody would think. Distilling that down to its core pieces and only using those is much harder than it seems. So I applaud Bruce Timm for his work, for a guy who's not known obviously as a comic book artist, but as an animator, to step out of his comfort zone and really hit a home run. Kudos to you. It just shows that this guy is a truly multifaceted genius artist. There's few things obviously that I picked on because that's what we do, but I mean, rating wise, I'm giving this a very solid 8 out of 10 all across the board. The retro look, the ads, the style, the story's fun. You've got that whole, again, very classic trope of each character in their own unique trap, but one of them has a secret that the bad guy doesn't know, which is Ant-Man can become Giant Man, and now they rescue each other one by one. Awesome. Great stuff. Classic comics. It is exactly what you want to see out of a comic book, especially something where if you were like, hey, new person who's never read the Avengers, check this out. I mean, I think that's a great book. So very solid 8 out of 10. I think it's super fun. And of course, I'm very curious to hear your thoughts. Again, as I mentioned, so far, all the comics we've looked at together have been from the 1960s. And now we've got this one from the 90s paying homage to the 1960s. How did it do? Do you think it fit? What if you didn't tell somebody that this was from 1999? Do you think it would have passed muster, that they would have thought it was from the 60s? Let me know in the comments. I love hearing your thoughts. I absolutely want to hear what you think about this issue. And then next week, we'll be right back here at the same time, and we'll be getting into issue number 2 of the Avengers. So we'll see you next week. Thanks.